Very carefully selected panel tonight. All former All Blacks and all former Auckland or Blues players, because the Blues are the big issue about Super Rugby, and we'll be coming to that in our second segment. But the rugby itself, Andrew, you enjoying it?
I mean, I am enjoying it. It's probably not consistent. I mean, there's a lot of, one team wins really well this week and then, they're losing the next week. So I think it's good to see the ball is flowing. I still think there's far too many penalties for what, I don't know sometimes. But in general, I think it's got off to a good start.
Well, Andy, let's have a look at the conference system, because that's one of the things that I'm having trouble understanding. Are you?
Yeah, it's very hard to understand how this point system works, how the conference system works. It's not good for the fans, really.
Well, you look at it this way, and you've got that super points table.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And so, and sadly, the product on the field is a wee bit all over the place too.
Well, you look at the NRL, Andy. You've got one table. You know exactly where you stand. And one competition, and all those games are good, and there's such a lot more entertainment in the performance. So, as far as a fan of a rugby team, you need to get good entertainment if you go along, because you're competing against those guys now, and that's not happening. Craig, we've basically got 3 different conferences, and then we get a 4th table, the one we've just shown as well. And, there are tables appear in the paper, and I look at them and think, what's this, the latest in lotto numbers?
Oh, Murray, I'm a very simplistic person, as you know. I played in the front row, and I'm all for you play someone, you either beat them or you didn't, and it comes to the end. Once you've played everyone, you know where you stand on the table. You get to qualifying out of the top 8 and find out you never actually played other teams, so it's all
one
over
of the
show.
elements of the product, and the product at the moment is very complex, and it's not. They've probably cobbled together a competition to get through the season, get all those. There's too many teams to have the number of weeks in the competition.
It's exactly
so they
that.
made up a mishmash.
What they've done is they've got a window, and they're fitting everything in the window. Whereas everyone plays everyone, and at the end of it,
and what suffers is the product.
Yeah.
And the product, if you add the television replays, the judiciary, you add all the other bits into it, scrum collapses and all the rest of it starts to look very ordinary.
Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about windows, Andrew, you're conscious that in the middle of this, we stop the whole competition and we have international rugby. And then we go back to this again. So, this is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and Dowdy would know, in the UK, you're playing 3 different competitions, and, it's crazy because, you want to finish that competition off, you win it, wherever you placed. It takes away a lot of that gloss when you chop and change.
Did you used to get points for buys when you were in the UK?
Mate, you get nothing in the UK if you don't play.
Dowdy, points for buys. What's this about?
Well, again, it's someone sat down, worked out the competition. Everyone gets a buy, so everyone gets a point. So whether you get no points or whatever.
Well, the Blues have had their best week. They've just had buys. We'll come to the Blues later. They are our major talking point tonight. There's been some staggering results, and you look at something like the Aussies in particular, the Reds, their best side.
Last year's winners.
Yeah, last year's winners, thrashed by the Bulls.
So that's a wee bit concerning for them. It shows that the competition is very severe, but there are some teams that haven't prepared well to start the competition, and the Blues are one of those. And they're suffering, I think, because they didn't have it together at all. They had players in Japan, they had players on holiday, and they had others that were at Hungies or wherever they were, and they've come up with a very average team to start the season, gone into it with no hope.
And yet we're seeing some teams that are playing pretty well. I'm impressed with the Cheetahs. I love their back play and the way they go about it.
They're one team that you'd never, ever take lightly. Yes, you're going to score some points against the Cheetahs because they don't really care about defence. They go out there, they throw the ball around. They've got some seriously big men. They'll run over the top of you, they'll ball out the back, and that's from 1 to 15. They certainly play some rugby, and it's exciting to watch.
This was a good win, this win against the Hurricanes, wasn't it?
Definitely. I think the Hurricanes would have been confident, going into this week, beating the Blues, wanting some points at home, and, definitely the coaching staff, you want to win your home games. So they would have been up for it in front of their fans, and to lose it against those guys, you'd have to be a special team to beat them at home.
But Andy, this was what
I understood the whole thing was to be about South African teams playing us, and we know where we are because we're not having conferences, they're just there. Yeah. And you get a result like that and you think, wow. Yeah. But what does that matter? Because they go back to their conference and something else happens.
Well, it's entertaining, and that's what the fans are looking for, some good entertainment, good quality football. And some of this other stuff's been pretty average to watch.
When I sit at home, I want to be able to understand why a try has been given. And there was an example that we have seen where they're not going upstairs. You can go upstairs even to score a try. I want you to comment on this dodgy decision that they didn't go upstairs for, Craig.
Yeah, no, look, hey, all the technology's there. It's there to utilise when they need to utilise. OK, the grounding, you can't tell me he saw the grounding, although he saw the aftermath, he saw the ball on the line. It takes 30 seconds, sometimes a little bit longer if there is a bit of indecision, but there's nothing wrong with going upstairs. And I think all this talk about going back, you know, 1 phase, 2 phases, go back, how many phases do we go back? If we're not going to go back and watch the grounding, then what's the point in doing that moving forward?
See, that's a crazy decision. You know, everybody at home sits there and thinks, one, the referee's a mug and he was on the wrong side, and then you don't see the bloke who actually made the call. I think it was Chris Pollock on the other side.
Has a profound effect too, because there's the result, the match result.
And then we come to the judiciary, which is another thing which is happening in this, and which is interesting. And I'm asking you, Andrew, do you think the game is getting too soft? Like, we've had the Guildford white card incident take place. What are your comments?
Oh, 100%. You know, I mean, the game is a contact sport, and yeah, definitely. If you know, none of us are for any foul play in terms of, you know, any high shots or clotheslines, but there's a fine line between you know, picking someone up and spear tackling them, than just picking them and letting them go. You know, I think you don't want that in the game, because that's part of the game, the contact and the physical nature of it.
Yeah, I would just say one thing about the white card, though. It's there for the referee. He didn't see what happened. He think there might have been some sort of indiscretion or ill discipline. So he gives the white card. He says, guy upstairs, have a look at this later, carry on. Okay. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
OK, so they're not too precious in your book.
They're not going to stop. They're not going to send him off. The worst thing that happens is he gets yellow carded or red carded, and they're down a man for something that wasn't that serious.
All right, well, if they're not too precious, let's have a look at this IOD decision and we'll go back to it, because this, I think, is something which is of a major concern. He got 6 weeks for this, Dowdy. 5 weeks.
Yeah, and Dad used to do that to me at training.
Hey?
Look, the rules are quite clear. When he goes above 180 and he's got to bring him down, he has to be responsible for lowering him to the ground. You know, OK, he landed on his back. If his head had been straight and his head had caught the ground and that guy had been condemned to a life in a wheelchair, then we wouldn't be talking about this now. So, I mean, the rules are clearly there. If you lift above 180...
But he didn't get it up that high, did he?
Well, I mean...
I think his feet went over his shoulder. That was the issue.
And then it goes into a room where you have a judiciary. They're not rugby people, but they're responsible. They say understand the game. They're responsible for dishing out the penalty subject to the law. And that the law's clearly stated.
Well, I thought that was far too hard to get 5 weeks.
I think 6 weeks or 5 weeks is too much. Possibly, if he appeals, he'd go back and get 2 weeks.
Would you be happy with 2?
I think 2 weeks is fair for that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
you think 2's right?
I think 2 weeks maximum. Or I think
you've got to be pretty clear that you got to make it safe, these tackles, and that's unsafe if he gets his feet above us, because it becomes part of the guy getting tackled. He can turn into a bit of a spear tackle too if he wants to.
I think the important thing too is for 11, 12, 13-year-old kids watching their heroes play, and they see them get away with it. And they go to their games and do it, and something doesn't quite happen, or it's, you know, like you say, it's a recipe for disaster. So the message has to be delivered. You cannot do that.
Yep. So in the main, the judiciary, right, perhaps a bit harsh with that. That's your summing up on it?
Oh, possibly. I would have gone for 2 weeks, not 6.
Right, fine. Now we've been looking at the whole deal associated with the length of the season. And I interviewed Lama Ramia on radio on Sunday and said to him about Sevilla, who was subbed after 60 minutes. Now, I thought he was their match winner if they were going to hold him. And he said, oh, it's a long season and we've got to keep moving the players around. Yeah. Now, hey, how long is the season? What do we do?
They've got to put a lot of people through the turnstiles with a lot of games to be able to try and make ends meet. And I think they've got into a situation now, they're subbing people really, who haven't had a high work rate during the game. Winger, for example. He's had a few runs and that's about it. You know, it's not as if he's going to be tired. And I don't think injured. And the same as the Blues had Anscombe on the bench the other night. They desperately need a first 5'8". Didn't play him. And Wepu comes from half-back to first 5 and this sort of stuff. And when they need a special, when they went well, the one time they did go well was when Anscombe played well against the Bulls. So if that's not a message, I don't know what is. So you can't possibly say, right, we'll take him off for 20 minutes, it'll get him through to the end of the season. Can't be like that.
Can't do that, can you? So why, you've coached more recently than anyone else here, why is it that coaches seem to have this thing in their head, 60 minutes? And we're sitting at home and we're watching and we know that we're going to see a bench emptied at 60 minutes. And the players are obviously told beforehand, and my point was severe, although I didn't hammer it with Alama when I was talking to him, was they'd made their mind up before the game started, that they were going to sub this joker after 60 minutes. That's not coaching.
Well, I mean, going into the game, and hey, I'm guilty of making these mistakes in the past. You know, you do have a game plan of saying, well, when you think you possibly could introduce a player, obviously the game and what happens in front of you changes the way you're thinking. You've also got 7 guys that are desperate to get on the field, you know, and managing these guys because they want some game time. Are they needed in the game time? You might have a position, you know, the selection in the first place was a little bit, you know, either way. And you know that person, when he comes off the bench, he's going to take his opportunity. Possibly the severe...
What annoys me more than anything else is to see the front row changes coming in with 3 minutes to go or stuff like that. That's just stupid.
Just giving a cap.
What does that
crazy
but
stuff.
it happens frequently.
It happens in test matches too. They dish out caps like that now. I think that is crazy. Now, there's another area we haven't touched on. I understand there's a paper coming out about technology. We've dealt with it in the in-goal area with that try. And now we've got to look at forward passes. How far back should you go? You know, the comment that Dowdy passed off air was, well, we'll go back to 2007 to the Rugby World Cup at Cardiff. But here's a forward pass here. Should you go back and stop it?
I think if it influences the try, I think you should, in that same phase, I think you should obviously go back because it does affect the
Have a look how forward that is.
I mean, everyone saw that when that game on.
But the assistant referee on the far side was right there. He should have seen that. He didn't call it. So we're saying, okay, you can't do your job properly. We're going to go back and not trust you. So, and then we keep going back, and all of a sudden we're sitting at home as a spectator watching replay after replay after replay. We want to watch rugby. At the end of the day, if he can't score the try and doesn't come across, well...
It's a good point you make.
Rugby is...
Let's hope the referees are reviewing it just as much as the coaches are, because that guy gets a job.
But I still think on that side that they're actually not doing their job properly. So there is an issue that, hey, look, if they can't do it, you know...
Move on, get another one.
Get another one. Or go upstairs for me.
Or go upstairs.
Yeah.
So let's hope we can get some guys
refereeing
who
in the
can do
weekend?
the job.
Anyone here
I have actually done my refereeing course.
You're refereeing.
It's a hard job. No one likes doing it, and they always cop it. But, you know, get out there and do it.
Yeah, I've done my refereeing course, so I'm very capable.
Well, mediocrity is not acceptable amongst players, so why should it be against...
At the top end, I agree.
Or the judiciary.